please. And we are live. Chair
Good
Fleury,
morning,
you're
and I'm here by calling to order this meeting of the Connecticut Board of Regents for Higher Education. It's good to see, if not be with so many of you, and look forward to our conversations and deliberations today. Let's start with the calling of the roll by the Assistant Secretary.
Thank you, Chair Fleury.
Here.
Regent Balducci.
Here.
Regent Bloom.
Here.
Regent Budd.
Here.
Regent Gray Kemp.
Here.
Regent Howery.
Here.
Regent Jimenez. Absence is noted. Regent Porth.
Here.
Regent Ryan.
Here.
Regent Santiago. Absence is noted. Regent Wright.
Here.
Student Regent Noriega. Student Regent Noriega. Absence is noted. I'm sure she'll click back in. Student Regent Iovine.
Here.
Professor Blitz.
Here.
Professor Sasanker.
Here.
Interim Commissioner Bartolomeo. Absence is noted. Commissioner Jutani. Absence is noted. Commissioner Lehman. Absence is noted. Commissioner Designate Russell Tucker. Absence is noted. Chief Workforce Officer Valeries. Absence is noted. Did Student Regent Julia Noriega join us?
Yes, I just hopped on. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been registered as present. Chair Fleury, you have a quorum.
Well, thank you. Welcome again, everyone. I'd like to call for a motion now to adopt the agenda.
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Great. First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we've got an agenda. Thank you. A few remarks on my part, and then I'll turn it over to President Cheng, and we'll get into the business part of the agenda, the public session, and so forth. I think it's important to acknowledge that these are particularly eventful times that touch us and those we serve in many direct and indirect ways. And we have also some major positive developments relating to our work here, while we're also deeply concerned with world affairs. In fact, it was 1 month ago on this day that Russia invaded Ukraine, and the deteriorating situation is of tremendous concern to everyone I know on the board and on this meeting today. Our hearts and prayers continue to go out to the Ukrainian people and to all the CSCU students, faculty, and staff who might be personally or indirectly affected. And I think we have to acknowledge that simply to observe the horror in Ukraine is to be affected in some way. And the question, of course, is what above our thoughts and prayers might we offer to help? And I know that President Cheng and the team are considering what actions our system can take to support the needs of this community, and that others, including the FAC, have been considering those questions as well earnestly. These include reflecting on our policies with regard to refugees and displaced individuals. And I look forward to him sharing his thinking, which I know is in progress in his upcoming report. I also, as we look closer to home, want to take a moment to congratulate Connecticut State Community College, which will become an accredited reality starting next year. No longer will we disadvantage community college students with multiple applications for enrollment and financial aid, mismatched curriculum, badly under-resourced student support services, and financially unstable institutions. I look forward to President Cheng's update on our visit with NETCHI, the accreditors, recently, and the exciting plan to move forward with a nation-leading one college vision and plan. We have a lot of work to do, but a lot of work has been done, and it has been recognized by those who oversee us from an accreditation perspective. So my congratulations and sincere thanks to President Cheng Acting President Rook and the team, and the legions of faculty, staff, administrators across the system who have assisted in helping us get to this point and setting forth the plan in detail to move forward. I also want to acknowledge very broadly, because this is still very much in progress, the excellent work of the bargaining team on behalf of the Connecticut State Colleges and University system and their counterparts for making meaningful progress on labor contracts. We'll review that in executive session today. And finally, I want to share a personal learning experience. After all, ours is a learning setting, and none of us is beyond learning, myself included. During our last meeting, I complimented Dr. Sasenkar, Vice Chair of the Faculty Advisory Council, for certain remarks she had made. In doing so, I used a term that in most contexts might be considered descriptive and benign. But I recognized later that the term can be considered a racial microaggression in certain contexts. I sent a personal note to Dr. Sasenkar to apologize personally to her for my use of the term articulate, which is indeed sometimes employed in a demeaning manner. This was absolutely not my intent, but the point here is not intent. The point is impact. I failed to appreciate the context. This was my error, and I apologize. I subsequently participated in an online program that's been made available across our community called Understanding and Preventing Microaggressions. This program is available to everyone, and board members also can have access to it. I commend it to you and to anyone interested in improving your knowledge and awareness of these issues of implicit bias, microaggressions, and all the associated issues and questions. It was a useful part of my own learning journey, and I commend it to everyone. But now I'd like to turn it over to President Cheng for his report and remarks.
Thank you, Chair Fleury, and I really appreciate your introduction and your remarks, which are always very selfless and focused on our system and on just making things better. So thank you for that. There's a lot to catch up on, and I try to keep this to a minimum to some degree, but I kind of can't help myself when we have many good things that I think it's important for the board and for our community to know. So I'm going to jump right in. First, I want to thank Congressman Jim Himes, who recently announced $1 million in federal funding to support the Advanced Manufacturing Technology Center at Housatonic Community College. And I'll channel my inner CEO, Dr. Dwayne Smith. It's a beautiful day to be at Housatonic. The project was selected by Congressman Himes from more than 80 applicants for inclusion in the Omnibus Appropriations Bill that was signed into law by President Biden earlier this month. The earmarked funding supports capacity building and the expansion of one of the state's most outstanding advanced manufacturing technology training centers. Congratulations to Dr. Smith and the team at Housatonic for their hard work every day, which allows opportunities like this to become reality. And thank you, of course, to Congressman Himes. He's always working on our behalf and supporting us in so many different ways. Another wonderful moment of recognition folks should really be proud of. Election Connection, which is produced by Western Connecticut State University's live news and election coverage production, recently won first place nationally in the highly competitive Broadcast Education Association's Collegiate Festival of Media Arts. The award is in the radio newscast category for Election Connection's November 21 live election coverage. This year, the association festival received 1,450 submissions from colleges and universities across the United States and abroad. This is Election Connection's third top award from the BEA, having taken first place in 2015 and second place in 2016 in the television studio category. So congratulations to Dr. J.C. Barone, WCSU Professor of Communication and Media Arts, and his team for their hard work and this well-deserved recognition. As Chair Fleury had mentioned, about collective bargaining. As many of you know, we've been negotiating with our collective bargaining agreements, negotiating our agreements across the system for more than a year now. And I'm really happy to report that we have made significant progress. So I cannot speak about the details of the negotiations just yet, which has been our practice all along. But I will tell you that I'm very confident that we will come to a place of formal agreement and approval soon. So this would not have been possible without the commitment, the patience, the dedication, and the focus exhibited by all parties. This has been really hard. We all know this. I believe we have learned a great deal from it. I certainly have. When I visited all of our campuses last fall, I heard and I saw firsthand the impact that these negotiations were having on faculty and staff. And I promised that we would continue to work to move things in a positive direction. So this has happened, and I'm very proud of our bargaining unit leaders, our faculty, our staff, our students, and the administrators who have worked so hard to get us to this point. So thank you so much to everyone, and I hope to bring you final news on the process and these agreements in the near future. Chair Fleury also mentioned our recent activity and progress made with the New England Commission of Higher Education, that's CSCU's accrediting body. NECHI has accepted our substantive change proposal. This gives us the green light to proceed with our plans to merge the 12 community colleges into Connecticut State Community College, otherwise known as CT State. The approval has us now scheduled to receive formal accreditation on July 1, 2023. But I want to pause us for a moment, and I want to ask us to focus not on the what or the when, but to take a moment to focus on the why. And apologies, as there are sirens roaring behind me, they will pass in a moment. We have embarked on this journey, and we've taken on this massive responsibility to change our community college structure. But again, why? The answer, to be blunt, is that our community colleges have been underperforming in almost every measurable area for more than 10 years. Graduation and retention rates, academic and student success indicators, and overall financial health. It's hard to admit, but collectively, Connecticut's community colleges lag behind their peer institutions in every neighboring New England state in almost every important category. And the statistics that are most crushing to me are the ones that show how we are leaving behind our Black and Brown students. So this is not what our students deserve, and this is not what the state of Connecticut deserves. And to not do something drastic, something bold and ambitious to try to meet this challenge and fix our problems would be a dereliction of duty. And we're not going to do that. All that said, we understand, I certainly understand, that many have worked for a long time for our community colleges and have given everything they can to be successful. And so these stark realities are difficult to digest. And of course, change overall is hard. Our community college campuses, as we have known them for decades, will become new entities. This means a loss of what we have known, and we have to create space for those emotions and be respectful. As a system, we have to continue to improve in our communication and transparency. We have to continue to be collaborative and focused on fixing the problems that plague our system and negatively impact our students, because that's what we're here for, to help and serve students. So I invite all those who have concerns to not only bring them to our attention, but to look at and use the data to partner with us to create solutions, and we will get it done that way. So special thanks to Interim Connecticut State President Michael Rook, Interim Provost Maya LaPierre Drager, CFO Carrie Kelly, Vice President for Enrollment and Student Affairs Allison Buckley, our regional presidents, Dr. Thomas Coley, Jim Lambella, and Dr. Rob Steinmetz, and all of our campus CEOs. But most importantly, I have to recognize the hundreds of faculty and staff who have been instrumental to this process. We would not be here without you, so thank you. NECHI's full letter has been shared with the CSU community, and we will continue to provide updates and opportunities for all of you to be a part of the process as we stand up a college that better serves our students, our communities, and our state. Okay, A lot going on in terms of senior leadership hiring. I noted earlier this spring that searches were underway for the Connecticut State President and for the System Office Provost. That's the Connecticut State Community College President. I'm happy to tell you that the process is nearing conclusion, and by April, we hope to announce appointments for these two key senior leadership roles. Special thanks to everyone who has been a part of that process. Again, administrators, staff, faculty, students. I'm confident we will have two wonderful new colleagues joining us as a result. We are also continuing the national search process for Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Connecticut State Community College. This process will continue through the spring. It's on track as we had scheduled, and I believe we will conclude in late spring or early summer. So we will share more information on this search when it's available. So, last but certainly not least, Chair Fleury mentioned the horrors of war resulting from the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the devastating impact on its people and that entire region. The refugee crisis has intensified, and we have been monitoring the situation and contemplating what we, as a system of higher education, can do. To that end, the senior leadership team is examining current policies and precedents to pave a path for all international refugees escaping humanitarian crises who may come to Connecticut. This might include admissions assistance, tuition waiver, and other kinds of academic as well as social and emotional support. Again, I repeat, this is not only for refugees from Ukraine, but for all individuals who have refugee status and come to Connecticut. We will continue to investigate and ultimately construct a proposal that will go to the board's finance committee as early as this May, which would, upon approval, put the policy in place and in effect for summer, fall students. As an immigrant who came to the United States as a child, I have to tell you personally, I've always understood and valued what America means to the world. My family left China in 1949 when Mao Zedong and the Communist Party came to power. They were political refugees fleeing their homeland in fear of a dictator. So I have known the United States as Meiguo in Mandarin, which translates to beautiful country, before I ever called it America or the United States. We have our problems in America, there is no question, but it remains a beacon of hope, a North Star of opportunity and possibility. For millions around the world, it is indeed beautiful, and we cannot forget that. In times of crisis, we ask ourselves what we can do, so our actions show who we are. Though a small thing in the greater landscape of the world, I hope these changes at CSCU will not just state, but show our values as a system, a state, and as a part of this beautiful country that we call home. Thank you, Chair Fleury. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, President Chang. I appreciate it and appreciate the heartfelt nature of your remarks. Dr. Sasinker, I see you have a hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for your apology and or comments. And I would like to respond to them substantively at some point. So I'll leave it to you to let me know what the appropriate time in this agenda will be for that. Thanks.
Okay, I don't think we have a place I can point to. So if you'd like to add something now, I think this would be as good a time as any.
Thanks. So I just want to acknowledge that, you know, I appreciate your acknowledgement of the way that the word articulate can be used or received. And also your concern that you had in some way hurt me by using it. And because it happened in public, you addressed it in public. I think this is all great stuff. We're modeling great behavior. You know, if there's any chance of offending someone, you want to address it. So I just want to assure you that though that kind of response and others like it have caused me offense in other contexts, your use of it at our last meeting was not one of those that caused me offense. And I think that these understandings, you said that you engaged in a training. I think understandings of the possibilities of microaggressions, I think these are powerful tools in understanding, each other's subjectivities and allowing for more nuanced and sensitive interaction. So I never want to make this into a dialogue where, some words are necessarily offensive, so that it cuts off. This should not cut off dialogue. It should expand it, and it should expand our understanding of each other. So uncomfortable as this is for me, and I'm sure for you, I want to make sure that that's what actually happens in this interaction. And I think in that moment, I was pushing back hard on a policy. We were all navigating a hard conversation. It was what it was. But I do say that besides that, when you are making the kind of policy that is as important as the policy that you all make here on this board, we're going to have hard conversations that might lead us with bruised feelings or discomfort. We have to be accommodating of comments that are a bit rough around the edges, especially when that roughness is a result of hurt and struggle, right? And that's just the responsibility. That's the job. And what we do here is bigger than hurt feelings. And what we are trying to do is create conditions that facilitate the possibility of educational access, excellence, and justice. Over the past 20 days or so, I've been listening to the conversation around the chef settlement in the legislature. And that conversation highlights the great tragedy of having spent billions of dollars in almost 3 decades in an effort to desegregate schools in a single city in that state that has been unsuccessful. And what it highlights is the tragedy of asking the wrong question, right? At some point, we conflated the question of how to desegregate schools with one of how to provide quality education to all students. And the presumption that led to that conflation is interesting because we have to think, like, why did we think that proximity to white students would ensure a quality education for Black and brown students? What's the assumption there? And why did we never think to simply invest in the places where Black and brown and poor students are? Because it's not just Black and brown students who are suffering in the state, right? And we should be reflecting on that, given that more than 50% of our community college students identify as Black and brown these days. And that this plan for consolidation is in no way a plan for how to invest in the system. I think another instance of asking the wrong question is a focus on graduation. We have been talking about how to get students graduated and get them credentialed. We have not been talking about how to get students well educated. And if you're not cautious about that, knowing how many high school graduates show up at our doors, unable to produce work at a college level, unable to produce work at a middle school level, then we're not thinking hard enough. This model, the way that we are going about this, there's nothing inherently wrong about a consolidation. There's nothing inherently wrong about streamlining processes. There's nothing inherently wrong about that. But the way that we have gone about it is not innovative. It's not unique. It has always existed in for-profit models and in certain exploitative programs that are geared usually towards non-traditional first-generation poorer students. We've seen it before, right? I think the reason that you probably heard from members of faculty and staff about the use of that word articulate is that there are at least a couple aspects in which that word can kind of sting, right? And it's one aspect is that it suggests some sort of surprise that betrays low expectations about the speaker's capacities. And it's also used to dismiss the content of a person's speech entirely while politely congratulating them on its enunciation, right? And both of those aspects are rooted in the position that some people's contributions are typically either not worthwhile or can be easily disregarded because of the speaker's relative lack of social power. Now, certainly Black women are among the people who butt up against that kind of presumption a lot of the time. But in this system, the majority of the workforce has been relegated to a similar status for some time now. The direction the system has taken has premised upon the assumption that outside consultants and misuse of national data are the only authorities. The absence of shared governance in the transition has eliminated any pretense that we have any authority over curriculum, policies, or processes of the Consolidated College. So to the extent that I am someone who represents the perspective of the faculty and staff to this board, there's a reason that people thought that there might be some offense. We don't need to talk about microaggressions. We need to talk about actual aggression. To the extent that the policies here function like a brick wall between some members of the public and the supposedly open enrollment institutions that we provide, there's actual harm. So until we provide standalone developmental courses that our educators actually know will serve communities, we're abandoning Connecticut's neediest students. Until we set aside funding for developmental education, you're actually withdrawing services from students who need the most. Until we invest in the system, we are replicating a pattern of wrongs that withdraws investment or constructs poverty in the places where Black and brown and poor people tend to be, right? Standardization of courses makes a joke of college level content. Philosophy courses were what do they call it? Streamlined without a single person with a philosophy degree of any kind participating in that alignment work. What is that, right? We need to give if we're not providing a real college education, we need to be honest about that. So many of us have been saying this for quite some time, and saying it within the system, we have not been heard. So we have attempted to say it outside of this system. Some of us were outside Middlesex Community College last fall, and we attempted to talk to our elected leaders about this. Secretary Cardona was at Middlesex Community College. He and I served as ex officio members of this board at the same time. I, along with a number of my colleagues, was placed under investigation for 3 months for being there and talking to these folks. I, in particular, was investigated for misconduct, for apparently attempting to infiltrate a private meeting with Secretary Cardona. It was a meeting to which I was invited by Secretary Cardona. But for some reason, members of this administration thought that my presence there was in some way worthy of disciplinary action. Why wasn't I invited? Again, we were ex officio members of the board. That is actual hostility, actual aggression. And possibly for the purpose of silencing folks. It didn't work, right? The system office questioning the legitimacy of FAC to NECHI and describing us as some rogue group with a grudge. It is the only system-wide body with elected representation. So to the extent that you don't listen to the people who represent it, you are not listening to the faculty and staff. That is actual aggression, right? I can go on, right? But I have gone on enough and I'm not enjoying this. I'll say this. I have written more than one extended letter imploring members of this board to have personal conversations, nuanced conversations about how to address matters of race and any other number of things, using the word equity appropriately, etc., in a more private, personal, engaged way, not in this public way. I don't enjoy this, right? I have yet to have such a conversation. it was one of those, at least one of those letters was signed by a long list of us attempting to engage with this group. You haven't responded to the researcher who wrote a letter to this board to explain that her work was misused and misquoted and used to lend support for assimilationist policy that they described as more appropriate to the 1950s, but which this board advertised as anti-racist. So I feel that I have to address these things, because to take time in a board meeting to address a microaggression that goes no further than a personal slight, when it makes all of these issues trivial and laughable, and it's the reason that terms like woke become such a slur, because there's a performance of virtue without substance, and quite frankly, a training. While absolutely that should be in our toolkit, actual conversation and engagement, there's no replacement for that. Actual back and forth communication between people is a humane way to handle these issues. And that has never happened for as long as I've been participating on this board. Again, I apologize. I didn't want to say any of this either.
Thank you. President Chang, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, if I just may take a moment, Chair Fleury, and thank you, Professor Sasanker, for your remarks. And you know, the thing I find heartening about your remarks is that they're honest, and there are a lot of things we agree on, because we want to do the right thing for our students. You know, there are some things that, you know, your view of them would be different from mine or the administration's, but I think those are things that we could work out. I've said this in the past, I will say it again. We welcome every opportunity to engage and have a discussion and have a conversation. I understand that you don't feel that that has happened. I would simply say that having literally hundreds, nearly 1,000 faculty and staff during the process of talking about the merger of the community colleges, having literally hundreds of faculty and staff engage in that process, shows that we have created those mechanisms and that so many have been a part of it. You know, and again, I find that heartening, and I think that we share the belief that we can do better and that we should do better. And, you know, equity is going to be at the heart of this, because whether you have seen data that is different from ours, whether you have interpreted what we have put out there publicly in a different way, we can talk about that. We can bridge that kind of choppy water. But I will tell you very formally and officially that what we do now is not at the standard that any of our students or our system deserve. And how we go about spreading resources across the system is not equitable. And I think that is exactly what we're trying to do. So we are actually trying to fix that problem. And so I invite you, I invite anyone from the FAC, and I invite anyone from across our system to continue to engage and to be stakeholders, co-authors, problem solvers, solution makers. I said it at the last meeting, and I'll say it again. Anyone can sit back and point fingers and criticize. And when we invite you to be a part of a process, as you will invite us at times to be a part of certain things, it's up to us to make that decision and say, do I want to be a part of it? Will I take that up? Will I work with people and partner? And, you know, some folks will and some folks won't. But the invitation is always going to be there. So you have that from me, you have that from the administration. Thank you.
We have some presentations now from two campuses.
David Blitz's hand is up.
Okay. I'm going to just ask you, Dr. Blitz, to be very succinct. These are not items on the agenda. This is President Cheng's report.
Precisely. Let me just say two things. One, we've asked on a number of occasions that there be an agenda item on a regular basis at this board meeting for a report from the FAC. And I think it would improve the functioning of this committee if, in fact, following Terrence Cheng's comments and his opening to further discussion and debate, that were added as a regular feature on this agenda, so that we don't have to take advantage of the president's report or the chair's report to, in fact, make our report. Secondly, I would just like to ask that the resolution that the FAC passed and which was forwarded to the leadership of the CSCU and the board on the Ukraine situation be entered into the minutes for information. I think the essential point of it was our request that the system provide free access, tuition, and fees to CSU colleges and universities for any refugees from Ukraine. And I welcome the fact that President Cheng has also extended that, at least as a proposal, to all refugees around the world. The third point that I want to make is just a question to President Cheng. In your March 10th email to the wider community on the relaxing of the various mandates, including masking, social distancing, contact tracing, and so forth. You mentioned that there was consultation of all of the various stakeholders. Had the FAC actually been consulted, we would have said, yes, we understand that, the situation has changed and that modifications to the COVID policies are necessary. However, it's important to reaffirm, and I would request that you do so, perhaps as you send a further email to the community for the effective April 4th date, that it be indicated that vaccine clinics will continue at the colleges and universities. And secondly, that we continue to recommend that faculty, staff, and students get booster shots. Thank you.
Thank you. President Cheng.
Thank you, Chair Fleury. So again, Professor Blitz, I appreciate your engagement and your commentary. And again, I think that there's a lot we agree on because we want the best things for our institutions, for our students, our faculty, our staff. I will say as a kind of operational note or a formal kind of note, and we've expressed this to you and to Professor Sasanker as well. The faculty advisory group, as faculty, officially engage with the board through the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Anything you wish to put forward to the board can and should happen through that committee. And so, again, we've said this privately, I'll say it publicly. This is the appropriate protocol. This is the way we are going to maintain streamlined and necessary and appropriate communications. The voices of the FAC are heard, they are respected, they are considered, and ultimately we need to make sure that they're coming through the proper channels and avenues. Of course, COVID is a fluid situation. When we say that all parties were considered, there are teams of folks who manage COVID across the system on every single campus. They represent their presidents. They are engaged with their faculty and their staff and their students. And so our deliberations and our conversations take place with all of those individuals and all of those teams, as well as with folks across the state and with federal guidance as well. So, but I agree with you that we want to continue to offer resources to try to combat the virus as much as possible. And our messaging will continue to reinforce that for sure. So, Dr. Sasanker, I believe Chair Fleury has ceded the floor to me, and we do have presentations from our colleagues. If you have maybe a 30-second comment, I think we can entertain it. But if there is something more substantive you would like to bring up in greater detail, I would recommend using the academic and student affairs arena.
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to point out that the Faculty Advisory Committee was created by statute as an advisory committee to the board. The fact that administration has inserted itself as the go-between between Faculty Advisory Committee and the board is located nowhere in statute, and I believe it is the thing to which we are objecting. Just want to make that clear.
Fair enough. Thank you. So, with Chair Fleury's approval, I would like to transition to our next portion of the meeting. It's one of my favorite parts of the month, to be quite honest with you, when we have our board meetings, is to hear from our institutional leaders across the system. And this month, we have two wonderful leaders, two great campuses. And I will hand it over now to Dr. Mary Ellen Jukowski. She is the president of Three Rivers Community College. Dr. Jukowski.
Thank you so much, President Chang. I'm delighted to be here with all of you this morning, and I find it is an honor and a privilege to serve as the president at Three Rivers Community College. And Alice is going to help with the slides. Next slide. Three Rivers was founded in 1970 as Mohegan Community College. In 1992, it was merged with Thames Valley State Technical College, and it was named for Three Rivers Community College for the three rivers, the Shetucket, the Antic, and the Thames that flow together in Norwich. Next slide. Our enrollment, we have about 3,000 students. This past fall, 23% took on ground classes, 40% took online, and then 36% took a mix of online and ground classes. We serve 22 towns. Students who are coming from those towns make up the majority of students from Colchester, Groton, Ledyard, New London, Norwich, and Waterford. Next slide. We offer 48 degree programs, 11 certificate programs. We were recently named a Gold Military Friendly School. Our students represent 59% are white, 9% are Black, 5% are Asian, 6% multiple races, and 19% Hispanic Latinx. The average age is 25. We have 63% of our students are female, 37% are male. And this semester, we had 36% of students who were the first in their family to attend college. Next slide. I want to share with you one of our unique academic programs, and that's our Nuclear Engineering Technology degree. It's been offered since 1985 to all Connecticut students. Millstone's scholarship program opens it to all students. They provide 16 full tuition scholarships for the 2-year program. There are 23 students graduating this year throughout the state. They include students from Hartford, Sterling, Branford, Voluntown, and Canterbury, a wide swath. The intensive nuclear labs woven into this program require students to come to the Three Rivers campus. Next slide, please. Nope. The lab equipment is not duplicated anywhere, and it's a special feature of this particular program. We have a $5,000 state-of-the-art radiation detection lab, a $6,000 one-of-a-kind nuclear reactor simulator that you see there in that photo. It's the only 2-year degree program in the Northeast, and 341 graduates have been hired by Northeast Utilities Dominion Nuclear. Other major employers include Electric Boat and Mirion. And Mirion is the largest manufacturer in this country of nuclear instrumentation. Next slide. No, okay. We also have at Three Rivers Middle College. So 67 students from surrounding towns are selected by lottery. They come to the college to complete their junior and senior years of high school. At the same time, they can take classes at Three Rivers. And about every year, we have 10 to 13 students who transfer, who enroll at Three Rivers. It's a wonderful feeder school for Three Rivers. We also have a very vibrant workforce and continuing ed program. And I'm really pleased because it is responsive to some of the healthcare needs in the state. We've got a certified nurse aide, an EKG and CPR, emergency medical technician, dental assistant, medical billing and coding, pharmacy technician, phlebotomy, veterinary assistant, and real estate. So far, we have 327 students who registered this spring. It's an increase of 72% when compared to spring of 2021. Next slide. The other hallmark that I would say is very unique about Three Rivers is we are the only community college in Connecticut that has a partnership with the technical schools. So when Grosso Technical School was built about 3 years ago, we negotiated to create a manufacturing apprenticeship center because it was located in Groton, it was close to EB. So as you can see, we do a lot of job training, and we've done the job training since 2016 because Electric Boat has had an enormous need for trained workforce. We developed the youth manufacturing pipeline, and we also have developed an apprenticeship program. You'll see in this photo here, that's what the space looks like at Grosso Tech. And in the picture up at the upper right, you'll see what looks like a black shell. That actually is a submarine hull and gives students firsthand experience so that when they finish up their workforce training, they can be employable with Electric Boat. Next slide. We also are very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm very proud to say that the two leaders of the ATD team worked with our coaches at ATD and are offering a certificate program this particular spring semester. I'm participating in it, and everyone at the end of the program will have to develop a learning plan that will go before a committee to demonstrate how they really are going to be practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion on the Three Rivers Community College campus. We also have been sharing data on race, age, gender, caregiving status with the faculty to make the faculty much more aware of what's really happening with the students that they are teaching. Next slide, please. I probably should have entitled this the Three Rivers Foundation because we have $7 million in the foundation endowment. Last year, we brought in over $1.1 million, which was grant money as well as donations. Next slide, please. The foundation provides scholarships. We awarded $635,000 in scholarships. You'll see the breakdown of fall, summer, and spring. We give the scholarships out on a 12-month basis. And we also had provided emergency funding for tuition, books, and laptops technology because we saw that many of our students had a real need to have a laptop to be able to do their college work. In addition, the foundation supports nursing and program initiatives. They provide money to update the mannequins that are used in the nursing program. They also fund a Booker T. Devon lecture series, and they provide monies for professional development for faculty. In addition, we are very active in trying to get grant support to augment the money that the college receives from the state. So we've received money from the Community Foundation, Dominion Nuclear, Ed and Mary Lord, Chelsea Groton, Levatina Foundation, Liberty Bank, and Paul Jones. So it presents a diverse array of funding. Next slide. If any of you are interested, we have a golf tournament that's happening in May. And I invite all of you to come and help fundraise for the college. And then lastly, we have a slide of partnerships. I think just many of the partnerships that we have in the Eastern Connecticut community and Southeastern Connecticut community. And lastly, the last slide is, I just want to say thank you on behalf of Three Rivers Community College. It's a great institution with dedicated faculty. There's a generosity of spirit at the campus that I so appreciate. So thank you very much for letting me present today. Good things are happening and we intend to make plenty more of them.
Thank you, President Joukowsky, and thank you for your leadership. I've been to your campus a few times. Great energy, great vibe. Your folks work hard. You lead them well. You care about the students. You know, you really know how to put the community in the community college the way all of our institutions do. So we really appreciate that. And I'll just say that Grasso Tech, space you have, that program is a wonder, and it's a real shining example for us to continue to try to match and aspire to. So thank you for everything. So I think the board might have questions, but I'm going to try to transition to Dr. Minkler and Middlesex first, and then maybe we'll take a couple minutes if there are any questions. So, well, first, I'm just going to say it's bittersweet because Dr. Minkler is going to present, but I want to congratulate him because he is going to be moving to Central Connecticut State University as an associate vice president for academic affairs. And this is a wonderful move for him personally. It's sad for us to lose a leader, but it's great to keep him in the family. So we're very happy and we're very proud of your accomplishments. And we're going to hear all about the wonderful things that you've achieved with Middlesex. And so, Dr. Minkler, congratulations. Thank you. And take it away.
Thank you, President Chang. And sort of on a personal note, when I started in the system, I was 22 years old, and I worked part-time in the media department at what was then Greater Hartford Community College. And if you told me I would have been a CEO of a college or an associate vice president of a university, I would have laughed at you. So I really want to thank this board, you, President Chang, former President Ojakian, and your predecessors for the wonderful opportunities that this system presents and that have presented me throughout my career. So thank you very much on a personal note. I also want to bid everybody good morning, particularly student regent Julia Noriega, who is an honor student here from the Middlesex campus. So good morning, everybody. So I'm Steve Minkler, CEO of Middlesex Community College, soon to be the Middlesex campus of CT State. And I'm speaking to you today from the video control room in our Center for New Media. And many thanks to Professor Rich Lanosi, Media Operations Specialist Todd Levesque, and student Patrick Boots for helping me out as a crew today. The center is one of our signature spaces built with $2 million in federal Department of Labor grant money and state capital projects funding. It first opened in the fall of 2014, and the center includes editing suites, a podcast radio studio, high-tech classrooms, a 900 square foot studio, and a high-end audio production suite where one of our faculty members is right now reviewing projects with his students. The center houses our digital media production degree program and its 150 students, and a professional production team that has created award-winning corporate, industrial, and educational videos for over 30 years. These two functions are tightly integrated to give students a hands-on real-world experience creating products for community partners that generate income for the college, and now they're producing products for the entire CT State Community College launch. Our mission statement begins with the declaration, students are the center of Middlesex Community College. I mean, this seems pretty simple, but without students, we don't have a college. But unlike other businesses, students aren't merely consumers of a product. They are active participants in building the skills and knowledge they'll need to be successful in further education and in their careers. They're also active participants in creating a community of scholars among all of us who study, teach, and work here. Putting students at the center helps us focus our work both on a daily basis and strategically. Our students' aspirations and those of the communities they represent help us create a college where place, programs, partners, and people all come together. So what about place? Middlesex was founded in 1966 and moved to our main campus in 1973. Our Meriden Center opened in the early 1990s, and 5 years ago moved from a costly leased building to Platt High School. And this unique partnership gives us rent-free space after the normal school day in exchange for allowing high school students to take college classes tuition-free. Dozens of students have gotten a head start on their college education while saving their families thousands of dollars. We're also following the lead that President Joukowsky talked about by working with Vinyl Technical High School in Middletown to build a plastics manufacturing center. Equipment manufacturer Arberg has loaned us the technology, and industry partners are developing the curriculum. We expect a full grand opening to occur this fall. Some other points of pride from our campus is the Center for New Media, a learning commons where we fully integrated the library, distance learning, educational technology, and tutoring services, our Magic Food Bus food pantry, which has served thousands of students and their family members who suffer from food insecurity, and high-tech classrooms throughout our campus. And coming soon, we're going to have an office in our Founders Hall building called CCSU at Middlesex. The majority of students who transfer from Middlesex transfer to Central Connecticut State University, and this partnership will give CCSU physical presence on our campus with advisors and staff who will have students seamlessly transfer from Middlesex to Central. We have a campus with great need, and so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out that 4 master plans and a system-wide sightlines report demonstrate that Middlesex is severely underspaced relative to our enrollment and relative to the other colleges. And we see that the answer to our space crunch is a bold campus master plan that we released in January 2020. The pandemic sidetracked this project, so we hope to gain your support to jumpstart it in time to celebrate Middlesex campus's 60th anniversary in the year 2026. This $80 million project will renovate 2 50-year-old buildings that have really reached the end of their useful lives except to house basic classrooms and offices. The project will connect these 2 buildings with a state-of-the-art science and technology wing, featuring lab spaces equivalent to the level of scholarship our faculty and students are engaged in. The project will also create a true student center by expanding our overcrowded Founders Hall. Even now, our guided pathways advisors must work in shifts and telework at times because we do not have enough offices to house them. So we hope to get your support in this project in the near future. What about our programs? Well, our top 8 credit programs by enrollment include this list here. And I should pay particular note that a couple of these programs are the transfer articulation programs that this board helped develop with staff and faculty throughout the system. So you'll see, for example, toward the bottom of the list, psychology studies went from not even being in existence a couple of years ago to having over 100 students today. We have 5 programs that are nationally accredited by professional bodies: early childhood, health information technology, ophthalmic design and dispensing or opticianry, radiologic technology, and veterinary technology. Our workforce development focuses on healthcare careers, real estate, safety and security, and Skill Up for Manufacturing, which is a partnership between Workforce Alliance, Gateway Community College, and Vinyl Technical High School. We have a Center for Civic Engagement, which is deeply embedded in the work of our community around us, a Center for Prison Education I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, and we've adopted the Guided Pathways Advising Model, one of the first colleges to have those in our system. We also have an honors program, of which Julia Noriega is a student in, and we were just recognized with the gold level military-friendly school designation. Partnerships. Our college is built on a wide array of partnerships we have with businesses, nonprofits, school systems, colleges, and universities, and these are just samples of the organizations that we work with to provide expanded hands-on learning opportunities for students and to engage with each other in mutually beneficial professional development. And what about our people? Well, we work together as one team here at Middlesex. Even with the changes that are occurring in our organization, we are committed to working with every single student who comes through our front door, no matter what our organizational chart might look like. We have 45 full-time and a little over 130 part-time faculty. We have well-qualified practitioners who teach in the classroom. These are folks with their terminal degrees or professional certifications, and they are all committed to community engagement. We have over 5,000 students, both in credit and workforce continuing education programs. You could see the trend over the last few years, and we're seeing an increase in the number of workforce development students relative to students in our credit programs as we try to recalibrate the needs of our community for short-term workforce-based training. Our enrollment this past fall in our credit programs, just shy of 2,000 students, 21% Hispanic, which is putting us in the position of being an emerging Hispanic serving institution, 9% Black African American, 61% female, and very surprisingly, 25% of our students are on the PACT program. This is the Pledge to Advance Connecticut Free Community College program. That's a significant number of students, which has helped shift the number of students who are full-time at this college. We've also done preliminary data analysis to suggest that students in the PACT program do significantly better than their counterparts who are not full-time, or maybe having to juggle things that in their lives that are not offset by having PACT program funding. And that's true regardless of the student's race, ethnicity, or gender. About 16% of our students are from Middletown, a similar number from Meriden. We joke that we have a mayor's trophy every year to see which town sends us the most students, and about 18% from those towns that immediately surround Middletown. We have a campus culture of civility and respect, We're making up for lost ground in diversity, equity, and inclusion by having a council that is addressing campus culture. We do this also through Courageous Conversations, which is a monthly series where we get together as people, simply to talk about matters of racial and social justice. Student activities are a hallmark. We actually were able to continue doing even some in-person student activities during the worst of the pandemic, and that's continuing today. And we definitely have a strong campus culture of innovation, transparent communication, and strong resource stewardship. We've actually saved this college over $11 million over the last 6 years through some very difficult decisions, but also trying to make sure that we can reserve our resources to put it for students first. So again, getting back to our students. Students are the center of Middlesex, and I'd like to briefly introduce you to a couple of graduates to give you a sense of who they are. Kristen Roberts, class of '87, is the Vice President for Communications at Comcast. And she is so involved in our community that she was awarded the Middlesex United Way Community Service Award. Gary Wallace, class of 2009, a U.S. Navy veteran, retired from the Middletown Police Department, came to Middlesex to finish off his associate's degree, and after retiring from the police department is now Director of Community Engagement and Relations at Community Health Center. Mukhshud Ahmad, class of 2017, came to us in our honors program. He really thought that college was not for him, but he showed great potential, transferred with a full scholarship to Wesleyan, where he earned his bachelor's in molecular biology and biochemistry, and he's currently a PhD student at Stony Brook University. And finally, Marisol Garcia, class of 2021, began her college studies in the Center for Prison Education at York Correctional Institution. She took classes also through Trinity College's Prison Seminar Series. She expects to graduate this May from Trinity in the Individualized Degree Program. And she says that the prison education programs provided her with the knowledge she needed to return to her community and the ambition to eventually work with lawmakers on sentencing policy, reform, and alternatives to prison. She expects to sit for her LSATs this fall and go into law school. So that's my presentation for you, and I'm really delighted to have shared in very brief form all the great things that are happening to Middlesex, and to hand it over to my successor, Interim CEO Kim Hogan, who will be taking over the reins for me on April 8th. Thank you very much, President Chang, and thank you, Regents, for the opportunity to address the board.
Dr. Minkler, thank you so much for the presentation. I love being able to see, I think we all love being able to see your actual physical environs in which so much of this great work happens. I've been able to be there a few times recording remarks or what have you. It's a top-notch, world-class facility. You all do a great job with it. And I remember distinctly meeting student Regent Noriega, and I think I made a note somewhere back then that she was probably going to take over the world in a very good way. And I remain very confident that she's on that trajectory. Chair Fleury, for the sake of time, I would recommend that Regents, if they have comments or questions, direct them to our President Joukowsky and CEO Minkler offline, and that I would hand it back over to you if that's okay.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the terrific presentations. Congratulations, Dr. Minkler. You've done a marvelous job, and we appreciate you. And we look forward to the continued success and progress at Middlesex. So we will turn now to the opportunity to address the board. We open 30 minutes of the agenda at every meeting for public comment. We'll do that as we have lately by asking the Assistant Secretary to facilitate the tech to get our speakers up, online, and heard.
Chair Fleury, in addition to the remaining, I believe we have 3 presenters left in our lobby today. Those who have dropped off due to lack of time this morning, their written comments will be included in the minutes as part of the public commentary. In addition to presentations today, we have received 4 letters and communications from the public and from students, and they have been forwarded to the Regents in advance of this meeting. And in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act guidelines as amended during the pandemic, the communications were posted on the CSCU website immediately prior to the meeting start time. And with that precursor, Alice, if you could bring in Brian Ramanauskas, a senior at Southern Connecticut State University.
He should be with you.
Brian, can you?
Yes. Good morning.
Are you there? Good morning. If you could check your audio one more time for me. There you are. And if you have your 3-minute presentation, you may begin.
Good morning. As a senior pursuing a career in higher education, I am fearful that the board and the system's office's inability to minimize the tuition of CSCU's community colleges will result in a negative impact on my future CSCU institution enrollment and Connecticut's economic recovery. Like many individuals, I was hit hard by COVID and recently closed my business of over 15 years. Having to travel nationally during the pandemic was not worth the risk of infecting my family. I knew I had to decide what options were available to me. I could have collected unemployment while searching for a job in a related industry, or search for a new career path by enrolling in a higher education institution. By choosing to invest my time and efforts on a new career path, I knew there was only one place that I could trust: Housatonic Community College. When I was younger, I attended a R1 institution and also took courses at Housatonic. While attending the two different institutions, I felt that the faculty and staff at Housatonic cared for my best interests. Upon my return to school, the advisor and I set up a 3-year plan to achieve my goals. Housatonic, in collaboration with Southern, put me on a path for success to fulfill my desire to help students in higher education reach their full potential both personally and professionally. Having a son who's graduating this year from an R1 university, I would not have had the opportunity for a high quality education without the affordability of CSCU's institutions, especially regarding community colleges. With the current increase in the cost of community colleges, many individuals in my situation will be hesitant in beginning their new career path. As tuition continues to increase, so will the affordability of the institution. This will result in adding to the declining enrollment. Individuals in similar positions to myself will realize that Connecticut State community colleges will no longer be an option financially. If this new increase was in effect 3 years ago, I would have collected unemployment and added to the strain of our state's economic recovery. Choosing to return to higher education was the best decision I've ever made. I've grown strong relationships with my staff and faculty. Their influence on me has sparked my desire to enter the field of higher education to help guide our future leaders. As a person who plans on being part of CSCU's community for years to come, I believe the board's decision will make it difficult for me to achieve my aspirations. By annually raising the tuition as seen over the past 2 years, will contribute to the reduction in enrollment, ultimately leading into less resources, staff, faculty, and quality education, which will put my goal of advising higher educational students at risk. I know better than most that maneuvering yearly funding is a very difficult process, but by looking at a long-term plan, you will see that maintaining affordable tuition at our community colleges would be the best way to combat the yearly decrease in enrollment. In addition, this will also maintain the balance in tuition between community colleges and the other CSCU schools. History shows that if one increases, the others will follow suit shortly after, making a college degree just a dream for many. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present my case to this esteemed board.
Thank you, Brian. Our next presenter is Ratua Lumba Tobing. Thank you, Brian. You can drop off the call.
Okay.
Ratua is professor of economics at Western Connecticut State University. Professor, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Can you test one more time and see if you pop up on the screen, please?
Yes, can you hear me? Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, thank you. Can I start?
Okay. Yes, you may. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members of the Board of Regents of Higher Education, my name is Ratua Lumba Tobing, and I'm a professor of economics at Western Connecticut State University. Much of what you will hear today from my colleagues across the CSU system will sound familiar. This is because for several years now, we've come to this board and repeated ourselves ad nauseum in the futile attempt to reason with you and work with you. Sadly, we must now accept that you have no interest in working with us. Time and time again, you've demonstrated that you don't know the slightest thing about higher education. Worse, you've also demonstrated that you don't have the slightest interest in learning from those of us who do. As a university professor, I would never presume to tell you how to run your private businesses or whatever it is you do for a living. You, on the other hand, seem to have no reservations making policies about a field you know nothing about. As a result, you have devastated the community colleges through a disastrous consolidation plan, added seemingly endless layers of expensive and unnecessary administrators, and made countless other mistakes over the objections of those of us who have devoted our lives to teaching and learning. The human cost of those mistakes are real. The suffering you have inflicted is real. This is not hyperbole. Last month, I stood with my brothers, sisters, and kin from the community colleges outside their offices on Woodland Street as our state's most vulnerable higher ed workers and students pleaded with you not to raise tuition. Nevertheless, you did so unanimously. I expect you will do this.
I believe we might have lost her. Have no idea. Alice, are you there? Can you check to see if she is anywhere?
I have her twice. So, Ratua, can you hear? Can anybody else hear me? Somebody give me a thumbs up.
Hear
I see
you.
Holly. Okay, great. I would suggest I'll move her back into the lobby
Oh,
and
there she is.
Okay,
She's back in, but I don't hear her.
yeah, she didn't leave. Let's move on to the next person and I'll put her back in the lobby and we'll go from there.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Um,
Our next speaker is Professor Andrea June. She's a professor of psychological science at Central Connecticut State University. Professor
Good morning.
June.
Yes, good morning.
Could you turn your video on, please?
Yes.
And there you are. And you may begin. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Andrea June. I'm an associate professor at Central Connecticut State University. My academic home is in the Department of Psychological Science. I'm also a member of the CCSU AUP Executive Committee. CSU AUP members have been working hard to advocate for legislation that would help not only ourselves and our working conditions, but also our students and their learning conditions. We thought we would share with you the work that we've been doing during this legislative session. CSU AUP has proudly supported several bills, including HB 5300, requiring legislative approval for the merger or closing of CSCU institutions, and HB 3031, which would give voting rights to faculty members on BOR business. CSU AUP believes that the faculty voting rights is an important step in hearing faculty voices and recognizing our shared governance in decision making. We also testified in support of HB 5033 and HB 5136, which address student, food, and housing insecurities, as well as HB 5115, an act requiring a plan to increase the number of childcare centers on or near each campus of the community colleges and the state universities. CSU AUP also believes strongly that this would improve our institutions as well as our system. We continue to still fight for these bills and ideas. In fact, we're running a letter campaign through the end of the month that calls on legislators to support the bills addressing students' food and housing insecurity. We know that students cannot do their best if they are hungry or they are searching for a couch to sleep on while they're trying to do their academic work. CSU AUP members were also at appropriations, asking that the CESUs receive a larger slice of the public revenue pie. We are disappointed that we were not joined by the Board of Regents at the Finance Committee, helping to grow a larger public revenue pie for all of the people of Connecticut, and we hope to see board members there with us in the future. In closing, I will say that while our union exists to advocate for ourselves and our colleagues, we also use our power to advocate for our students. After all, that is the collective reason we are all here. So thank you.
Professor June, our next presenter, Dr. Pritchard had Are we moving on the list?
Yep, I'll try to get Ritu on at the end.
Okay, Dr. Tomzak is a professor of social work policy and community organization at Southern. Dr. Tomzak, could you test your audio for me, please?
Yes.
Good morning, you may begin.
Okay, thank you. I come before you today not purely as a faculty member in the social work department at Southern Connecticut State University, but as a graduate of that institution. And as an alum, I have a particular concern with whether we will continue to invest in students like me so that we can become productive, contributing members of this state's economy, as the vast majority of us do, or whether we will abandon the historic mission of the Connecticut State University system to give middle and working class students like me a chance at, say, becoming a college professor. Current tuition and fees in our system already makes this much more challenging than it should be, and now further tuition increases are on the agenda. This is outrageous, immoral, and unsustainable. When I attended Southern in the 1980s, we paid about $500 a semester in tuition. I was lucky enough to grow up in a time period when the state invested in kids like me who wanted to improve themselves by getting an education. When my mother-in-law attended Southern's predecessor institution in the 1950s, she paid $50 a semester. My students pay over 10 times what I paid in the 1980s and over 100 times what my mother-in-law paid. Increases far outpacing inflation, I should add. What we need to do then is to lower tuition, not to increase it. And as we know, the state has billions of dollars in surplus, which we could use to support this, and many millionaires and billionaires whose taxes could be raised to provide additional revenue to support investing in our students. But this is not the strategy that is being pursued here today. Rather, what this board is doing is to hike tuition by nearly 5%, which is going to price out many of our students. They will be washed away, not because they don't have the skills, talents, and abilities to succeed. No, on the contrary, as a result of these unconscionable tuition hikes, the doors to opportunity, to personal achievement, to a better life will be closed simply because they cannot afford to pay for their education. This tuition hike will increase the number of Connecticut higher educations disappeared, those who start but can't finish because the price of education is too high. This board should be opening doors, not closing them. Connecticut Voices for Children, in analyzing the state of work in Connecticut, documents that our state is still recovering from the loss of jobs from the 2008 recession. And now our student workers will need to deal with the pandemic-induced recession. As Connecticut Voices notes, like the three prior recessions, the recession of 2020 generated a deeper job loss in Connecticut than the U.S. as a whole. And like the past recoveries, the current recovery in Connecticut will take several years and likely significantly lag the pace in the U.S. As a whole.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Tomzak. Your 3 minutes is up.
Thank
you very much. Dr. Pritchard, are we bringing Professor Lumba-Tobing back in? Or are we bringing Seth Freeman in?
Correct. There is Professor Freeman right there.
We have our next presenter is Seth Freeman, 4C's president. Seth, can you check your audio for me, please?
Yes, can you hear me, Pam?
Yes, thank you very much. If you can, the fire engines have gone by, you may begin.
Thank you, Pam. Board of Regents members, I'm happy to address you today. Our unions, AFT and 4C, secured a big victory since our last meeting. Against the wishes of the Jackson Lewis wing of this board, we won job security for bargaining unit members being attacked. This is a huge victory. We stood strong against the bad actors on this board. We proved what workers can do when we stand together. We also secured a big victory in HB 5300, legislation to require legislative approval for the disastrous merger. We are working overtime to get our elected leaders to finally learn the truth about what this board is doing. In the meeting last month, I saw many on this board confused and dumbfounded as to why we call you anti-faculty Jackson Lewis union busters. I want to clarify that today. We call you union busters because you are actively trying to steal bargaining unit work away from our unions. In my written statement, I highlight examples of these. The one college director of marketing, the Director of Institutional Advancement at Capitol, are a couple. The most disgusting, however, and the most egregious, is your plan to remove faculty department chairs and replace them with academic and associate deans. Your plan. We call you anti-faculty because you treat community college faculty like second class. Read my statement. You are doing things to community college faculty that you would never entertain doing to university faculty. This includes the garbage I teach policy, eliminating developmental education, and again, removing faculty department chairs. All the things in my statement we've said before, and we've been saying for years. All the things in my statement we've told President Chang. President Chang and this board have ignored us. And this board has rubber stamped every hostile anti-faculty initiative set before you. The simple reality is you've treated us like dirt for 5 years. We might only be community college employees, but we're not stupid. We understand the merger of our colleges as what it is, a hostile takeover by the CSU system and an attack on faculty and an attack on our unions. So again, that's why we call you that. Regents Bud, Regents Holly, I hope that's helpful. Maybe there is hope for some of you on this board. We know there's no hope for Chairman Fleury. We're done with him. And we damn sure know there's no hope for Regent Jimenez. But maybe some of you can be redeemed. But frankly, we're done asking nicely. We're done with that. Now we're simply coming after this board until we get some people that can actually, do a decent job. So again, I'll end by reiterating a simple message from the faculty and staff. Stop attacking us. Stop taking our work and giving it to managers. Stop lying to the legislators and lying to the public. Stop treating us as second class. Once you do so, you'll find an eager partner in the community college faculty and staff. But again, do your rubber stamping, do what you need to do. We will continue to fight for the community college system and working conditions we believe best serve our students and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Freeman. And we are going to bring in Ratua Lumba-Tobing back in. And she had about, Professor, you have about 1 minute left of your time. So if you could gauge a good place to complete your comments, that would be fabulous. Could you check your audio one more time for me?
Good morning.
There you are. Thank you. You could begin your final minute. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that was a coincidence. So last month, I stood with my brothers, sisters, and kin from the community colleges outside your offices on Woodland Street, as our state's most vulnerable higher ed workers and students pleaded with you not to raise tuition. Nevertheless, you did so unanimously. I expect you will do the same to my students in the CSU system, regardless of what I or anyone else says here today. Therefore, I hope this message serves not so much as a lesson to the board, which has shown itself to be immune to logic and evidence, as it is to our students. This board does not support you. Rest assured, the faculty and staff at the colleges and universities do, and we will stand by you to fight for the education you and our communities deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Chair Fleury, that ends our public comment section. Thank you.
Thank you. President Chang.
Thank you, Chair Fleury, and I want to thank all of the folks who have engaged with us in public forum. It's really important to have, this kind of, feedback that we can absorb, and I want to guarantee that, we as an administration and as a board, we are very closely listening, and we take the feedback seriously. So I want to be respectful and respond to some of it. A few folks have mentioned the tuition increases. And, I'm not going to ask them to speak to it, but I know that our student regents and our student bodies within the governance structure could speak to how extensively I and our team met with them to try to explicate the process and the thinking behind the tuition increases. One thing I want to make sure folks know is that this board and this system has not increase tuition in the last few years. And that has been a very intentional, non-action, I would say. The board has gone out of its way not to increase tuition. And a great deal of thought and work has gone into the deliberations and working out, how to increase tuition. The sad truth of the situation is that, raising tuition is not the only thing we need to do to get the system on a track to financial stability and sustainability. It is one piece, and frankly, it is a small piece. And we do everything we can to keep that burden off of our backs. The reality is that there are a great deal of sunken costs across our system. The reality is that our student attrition and the drop in enrollment revenue is at a much higher pace than the attrition in our staff and in our faculty. And so sunken costs remain very high. So there are a variety of factors, but I guarantee you that we put a great deal of thought, effort, intent, and emotion into these conversations about when and how much we will raise tuition. It is an unfortunate piece, and it's a reality, though. So we can't shy away from that. We will try to do a better job of communicating, because I think there is a misperception that this board or this administration are not out there advocating for every dollar, every resource that we can bring in to CSCU to help our students. So if I've done a poor job communicating that, then that's on me. If our team has done a poor job communicating that, then that's on me. But I will tell you that that's all we do. That's all we do, is try to go out there and fight for this system and fight for resources with our legislative partners, with our community partners. And that's work that you don't see. And again, we have to do a better job of letting you know what we're doing, but I want to disabuse anyone of the notion that we are sitting back and just letting things happen to us. We are certainly not. And we are out there advocating and fighting for all of us. And that is something that we all share as stakeholders in our system. I wish we could control how taxes were raised in the state, or how the quote unquote Connecticut rainy day fund could be used, that falls far outside of the aegis of this board or of our system. And so again, I just want to make sure that folks understand where we are in that paradigm. The last thing I'll say is, some comments have been made today and in the past, which, personally I find discomforting, but I'm happy to sit in that discomfort because that's part of a natural conversation and dialogue, right? And we need to hear things that make us uncomfortable sometimes, because we're trying to get to the truth of the matter and we're trying to do good work together. And I just want to remind folks that, we are trying to do good work. All of us, the board, the administration, the faculty and staff, the students, we're all trying to get to that good place for everyone to serve students and serve the state. Personally, I feel that folks have a right, again, going back to an earlier theme, the United States is an incredible place because we have First Amendment rights, because we can say and feel and do certain things. And that is magic. That's magical. And we see that now every day. In situations like ours, I don't always find it terribly helpful or constructive to have ad hominem attacks or to cast broad and very general aspersions across our field and across our institutions and bodies, because, at the end of the day, we want to try to fix problems and solve problems. That's what I want to do. That's what our team wants to do. That's what our faculty and staff and students want us to do. And so I just hope that we can continue to move forward together and try to be as collegial and professional as possible, and really just try to work together to solve things, because, we agree on more things than we disagree on if you really take a step back. So, I still feel really great about where we're going. And I know that even with our challenges, we're going to continue to fight to get there. So thank you, Chair Fleury. I appreciate the time.
And thank you, sir. May I ask for a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Great. We have minutes. Thank you. And I'm going to keep moving along here. Consent agenda is before you. It's in the advanced materials. So may I have a motion on the consent agenda, please? Thank you, Regent Budd. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Got you. Any discussion or questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Great. The consent agenda is approved. A lot of really great things in there on coursework, curriculum, recognition, including of Lin-Manuel Miranda, which is really exciting, as well as former students who've come through the system and achieved great things. It's wonderful to see. The standing committee reports are limited today, but I want to thank the committee chairs and members for your good work and earnest work on all of the matters that come before you, whether that be academic and student affairs, audit, HR admin. But let me turn it over now to the Finance and Infrastructure Committee Chair, Regent Balducci, because I know they have a report and an action item for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're correct. We've had 3 items on our agenda on the Wednesday, March 16th meeting date. 2 are on the consent agenda today. The remaining item, which is similar to last month's discussion to raise tuition and set fees at the community colleges, this month we are looking to do or consider raising tuition and fees at the universities. Before we begin, I just thought a positive note should be made that Charter Oak will not be raising tuition this year, and it will be the 3rd year in a row that they will not have raised tuition, and I think that deserves a note of congratulations and great job to those folks over there. Moving along to the issue of tuition and fees at the universities, some of the numbers I'll give you quickly here are numbers you've heard before, but I think it's important that you hear them again. We have been facing roughly a 24% decline in enrollment. That's significant in any business or industry. This costs us approximately $84 million in losses to the system. The 27th payroll and fringe benefits will cost us another $40 million. There's a $70 million in salary and fringe benefits for the fiscal year 2022 CBAC retroactive raise, and a $60 million in 2 years of raises from the 2017 CBAC contract. We're going to get a few dollars back at the governor's recommendation, at least right now at the present time. It's roughly $5 million to the community colleges and $5.1 million in additional funding for the 27th payroll, which the governor recommended. And another $14.5 million for pay increases to help fund the collective bargaining increases. We all know that that is not where they are, because I just said that roughly $40 million it will cost us in the 27th payroll, et cetera. So we have an idea that we have a long way to go. The bottom line is approximately a $250 million shortfall. The Finance Committee, in consultation with the university presidents, with Ben, Melantine, and their team of hardworking folks, came up with the fact that we recommend an increase to the universities of $154 in tuition increases per semester, $113 in university general fees, and $24 in university fee, for a total of a $291 increase per semester, or $582 for an annual increase in tuition. By the way, this recommendation to the board will be approximately $16,000 under UConn's tuition and fees. Hopefully we will get help from the legislature, the governor, and the legislators recognize the need to keep our universities and colleges afloat, that it's important to our state, our community, and our success as we move forward. And we're hoping with the help of faculty, staff, and certainly our folks here in the system office will be able to garner more money to help reduce those funds, because we only raise about $15 million toward our debt by increasing our tuition, which you can see is not a great deal. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will move adoption of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For purposes of discussion, may I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we've got a first and a second, and now discussion. Do we have questions for the chair? And I see that our CFO, Ben Barnes, and certainly President Chang are here as well. Regent Bud.
I guess I'm simplistic. If we're 250 million deficit and we're raising 15 million, was that the number with this raise? I take it there's reserves and whatnot to make up the difference. What do you expect to do with the rest of the difference? What do we anticipate may be a source of closing part of this gap? Yes.
If we raise tuition much more, it would be certainly a detriment to our students, and we're trying not to do that. We're going to look at that 250 million. We're going to hope that somewhere along the line, the Higher Education Committee, the governor in his wisdom, and the legislature as a body will help consider removing some of the issues that we face, particularly the $250 million. We are looking at a shortfall that is not going to be easy to overcome. The increases in wages and the potential increase in salaries and fringe benefits that we are going to be facing over the next several years is quite dramatic. And by the way, as an aside, I heard comments from several professors commenting how bad it is that we're doing this. I didn't hear any of them suggesting that they might consider either not taking a raise or taking less than a raise that they are actually getting, or indicated that they're getting. So, you know, it's a big nut that we have to deal with, but it's not one that's going to be easily removed. And again, we have to go back to the legislature for their help because we are supported by them as a system.
Can I have a follow-up question here?
Absolutely.
Do you think that by raising this tuition and getting the 15 million, we have at least shown that we're considering some method to close the gap? What would be the message that the raising the 15 million would give that motivated the decision to raise apparently the universities?
You hit that one right on the head. That was a home run you just hit. Yes, we need to do it. It shows the legislature, I think, and the governor that we're trying to move in the right direction, and yet we're trying to keep it within the range of reason so we aren't losing students or turning students away from continuing on. It's an ongoing battle we've had over the last dozen years or so, and it hasn't gotten any better. We try to present the best programs with the best faculty and staff that we can, and in order to do that, we do have to take care of those folks financially, with their fringe benefits, and with the programs that we offer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the good questions and for the responses. President Chang, I know your hand was up, but you put it down, so I'm going to assume you want to stand down for a moment. And I see Professor Blitz has his hand up.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions here. When we discussed the increase to the community colleges, we had in the staff report an indication, or at least in the verbal report, of the number of students who would not be affected by that increase, since they would still be covered by federal grants or by PACT.
50 to 25%.
And I don't see a similar estimate for the universities. The second point is, as well, there was, when we talked about the community college increase, there was an increase to the percentage of being set aside for financial aid. If I recall, it was from 15 to 17%. And I don't see an equivalent statement also in the resolution or in the staff report. So those are the two questions that I have. What percentage of students do we estimate are going to have to pay this increase fully out of pocket? And secondly, what is happening to the prospect of increasing the set aside from tuition and fees for financial aid at the various universities?
Thank you, Dr. Blitz. You know, just quickly, and I'll turn it over to Ben, but roughly the universities and community colleges are two separate programs as far as financial aid. And roughly, if I recall, the tuition, the financial aid at the universities ranges between 15 and 25%, as opposed to the 15 to 17% that we have at the community colleges. Of course, there's a differentiation in tuition, et cetera, in the two systems. But with that, I'll turn it over to Ben, who I'm sure can comment further on your point.
Yes, thank you, Professor Blitz. There are a couple of points I would make. First of all, we have not yet completed an analysis of the share of university students who pay nothing. It's somewhat complicated to do, and we have not yet completed that analysis. I believe that the number is far lower than it is at the community colleges, just given the different levels of tuition. I would point out, however, that for students who are eligible for Pell Grants, that the Pell Grant has increased for this year. Congress has recently taken action on the Pell Grant, and it has risen in an amount which is approximately the same as the tuition fee increase that's been provided. So students who are on Pell will not see an out-of-pocket increase in tuition and fees as a result of this action, because the increase in the Pell Grant matches the proposed increase in tuition fees. So that we unfortunately don't have a firm answer on that question, but again, it is much lower than exists in the community colleges. The last point I would offer is that one of the components of the tuition resolution you will see is that it includes a change in the way we charge out-of-state tuition and fees for students in adjoining states. This creates a sort of an as-of-right ability for universities, or a requirement that we charge students from New York and New Jersey the NEBI rate, which is 50% higher than the in-state rate and is lower than our historical out-of-state rates. We believe that this is going to assist us in increasing enrollment from these neighboring states. However, in some cases, this will result in an actual reduction in financial aid. And I'll give you the example of a student who is on an athletic scholarship at Central, who is from New Jersey. Under the current rules, we would have to provide him, under the NCAA guidance, to give him an athletic scholarship, the full tuition fees for an in the out-of-state category. Because that student will be charged a lower NEBI rate, the amount of financial aid we have to provide to honor an athletic scholarship for that student is reduced. So there are some significant cases when we reduce the out-of-state tuition and fees for students, for most of our out-of-state students who are from New York and New Jersey, that we will that will require some adjustments to the institutional aid. We elected not to change the floor, the board policy minimum of 15% in the case of the CSUs. As Regent Balducci indicated, most of the universities are well above that. I think at Eastern it has approached 25% in recent years. So we may see some minor reduction in that as a result of the change in treatment of adjoining state students, but we anticipate that the set-aside rate will continue to be effectively well above 15% across the universities.
Thank you. Regent Porth.
Thank you. Again, this is a really, really difficult decision to make. My first question was Dr. Blitz covered, so thank you for that. But just to reiterate, we're talking about an approximately 5% increase in the total cost. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And once again, just for the record, when was the last time these costs were increased for students?
University was 2 years ago by 2.5%.
2 years ago. So what year was that, Ben?
So I'm just making sure I have it right. So the 21-22 matched the 2021. The 2021 was 2.5% higher than the 19-20. So we've gone up that 2.5%, and then we took a flat year and now we're seeking the increase that's before you today.
Thank you. Two more quick questions. Do we keep, because this is an issue all across the country, more so for private universities, but do we keep track of the percentage of our students who graduate or don't graduate with significant debt? And do we keep track of the amount of debt people leave our institutions with? Is there a way to do that?
Yes, we do. We certainly track the amount of debt that they are incurring through the federally I mean, there are certain kinds of aid that are packaged with financial aid. So federally subsidized and unsubsidized loans are included within the package to students. There may be additional debt that they incur outside of that system. If a family elects to take out loans, you know, mortgage on their house or borrowing from a credit card or what have you, we won't have all the debt that students may incur. Or, for instance, if they go to Chesla and have a loan outside of the federally guaranteed system. However, we do have information on the amount of federal loans that students take out each year, and I would be happy to try to compile a report on the amount of debt that has been taken on by our university students in recent years.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and I, can read and appreciate and feel myself the consternation that we have. And yet, we only need to look at our public comments to recognize the tension between accessibility from a financial standpoint in the eyes of a student or a faculty member who's advocating for those students and their conditions, and the costs of running the system and providing the services, including those which we'll be asked to consider in the context of the new bargaining agreements, about which we also heard passionate testimony and vitriol today. There is a direct line, and to honor the need to compensate in a way that's competitive with the market, acceptable politically, and in the environment we have here in Connecticut, and the needs of students, that's the balance we walk. As President Cheng said, we have nothing to say about whether millionaires are taxed. We can advocate, as in his response to Regent Budd, Chairman Balducci said, he used the word hope. We can hope for additional funding from tax revenues to offset tuition and to offset the costs that are in no way remotely covered by a tuition increase, as distasteful as you might find it, of this nature. This is the reality of the world in which we're operating, and we just have to step up to and acknowledge that that's the difficult balance for this board. And for my part, frankly, I remember the deafening silence when we deliberately made the choice in the face of yawning deficits and uncertainty and declining enrollment not to raise tuition last year. Deliberately made that choice. Nary a word was spoken. Now it's a different story because we have different dynamics at play. And we just have it on our plate to try to make the best judgment we can under these circumstances. And, look back and in my case, certainly feel that we did the right thing in the moment. And wish that we were in a scenario where we didn't have to consider tuition increases. But our finance committee looks at the numbers. And frankly, to have a CFO and a finance committee chairman have to use the word hope so that they don't have to answer a serious economic question with tuition only is a little depressing. But that's the world we're in. And I know President Cheng and our team will advocate, as will member of this board, as will faculty and students, very strongly to see that there is much support as possible from the other source of revenue to run this system, and that is government, taxpayer provided revenue. Are there any more questions about the substance of this proposal? Questions? I'm going to call the vote then. We have had a motion and a second. We've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, so it is approved. Thank you, the Finance Office, for the hard work on this. And I do want to just, lest there be an impression that the two gentlemen in the conference room make all this up and bring it to us. The leadership and administrative team at the university level has a very significant voice, as do the leaders of the community colleges in tuition setting. And it is a process with many voices in it that leads to the recommendations we hear. Just so that's clear, it's not entirely board driven. The recommendation comes to us, we consider it as we have, and as we have approved it. We have no other reports, nothing from exec committee. We are going to have an executive session. So before I call for a motion for the executive session, I'm going to state that the board will move into the executive session for the purposes of discussing collective bargaining. No votes will be taken in the executive session. There may be a vote taken by the board following the executive session. I'm not going to recognize anyone before we enter executive session. President Chang, Dr. Pritchard, Ben Barnes, Ernestine Weaver, you're all asked to join us because this is relevant to your expertise. So those who wish to, please stand by. We'll be back. I can't give you the timeline. May I have a motion now for executive session? Thank you,
moved.
Bud. And a second?
Second.
Howery, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Hearing none. We have approved the motion for executive session, and I'll turn it over to the Assistant Secretary to manage the tech for that process.
So you will, the members of the board will drop this call and join the other invitation that you have from me, and then we will come back to this meeting. So this will stay live, just so you're aware.
Alice, while I still have you there, could I just make a small request that you send to us the PowerPoints that were presented today?
They will, absolutely, Dave, have to. They will also be in the minutes for anybody who's looking for that.
Thank you.
But we'll get them to you as well. Aviva, you are on mute.
Where is the second invitation, Alice? Did you
I will send it again right. I sent it, but I'll send it again right now.
Thanks.
Okay. So
Alice, could you send it to me too, please?
I'll send it to everybody right now. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. The call will be muted and we'll be in executive session. Thank you. You've reached her office. This is her assistant. How may I help you? Yeah, I'm not able to assist you. I'm sorry. She's in a meeting, in a board meeting right now. So she just handed, probably, she's in all day today in this meeting. She handed me her cell phone. So, if you could give her a call tomorrow or Monday, it'd be better. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Can you hear us?
I can.
Thank you.
You ready to come back out of exec?
Yes.
Thank you.
Pam, Rachel Jimenez was with us in the executive session and has joined us now.
I'll make a note. Thank you. And let me just make sure that everyone who was with us has joined us back. 1, 2, 3. 6.
Hello again.
We're all together.
Technical exercise.
We're all together. So Chair Fleury, if we could bring us back officially.
All right. Are you live now?
We're always live. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So thank you for your patience. We have had a good and detailed conversation in the executive session about the matters we said we'd be discussing, having to do with bargaining agreements. And based on those discussion that we've just concluded, I'm going to put forth a resolution as a motion to approve. So I'd like to ask the Assistant Secretary to read the resolution into the record, and then I'll ask for a second, and then we move to approval.
Chair Fleury, this is a resolution concerning the ratification of CSCU collective bargaining agreements dated March 24th, 2022. Resolved that the collective bargaining agreements listed below are hereby ratified and adopted, subject to approval by the Connecticut General Assembly in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Section 5-278, with copy of said collective bargaining agreements attached hereto and incorporated herein. A, tentative agreement between State University Organization of Administrative Faculty and Board of Regents for Higher Education, dated March 1st, 2022. B, tentative agreement concerning changes to Charter Oak State College Professional Bargaining Unit, Local 1214, ASKME Council 4 and Board of Regents for Higher Education Collective Bargaining Agreement negotiations, dated March 9th, 2022. Tentative agreements for successor collective bargaining agreement, Congress of Connecticut Community Colleges and Federation of Technical College Teachers and the Board of Regents for Higher Education, dated March 7th, 2022. D, tentative agreement between ASKME Council 4, Local 2480, and the Board of Regents for Higher Education, dated March 10th, 2022. And E, tentative agreement between CSU and CSU AAUP and Board of Regents dated March 10th, 2022. And be it further resolved that CSCU President Terrence Chang is hereby authorized to execute said collective bargaining agreements and any necessary amendments thereto on behalf of the Board of Regents for Higher Education. Thank you, Chair Fleury.
Thank you. May I have a second to my motion?
Second.
Okay, Regent Howery is seconded. Is there any further presentation or discussion? Hearing none. On the resolution, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Resolution is adopted. Thank you. And at this juncture, I will then thank all of you, President Chang and his team, and all those who spent time with us today for your time and your contributions, and ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second, I'm going to give that to
Second.
you, Ari. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I think it's safe to say that's adopted and we're finished here today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Fleury, and our live stream has ended. Thank you.